Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers, where we play games that are classic.
Yes, and sometimes we're the Classy Gaming Brothers.
Yes, sometimes we are the Classic Gaming Brothers. And sometimes
I think that we're always classy.
And we're always brothers.
And we are always brothers. You have known me your entire life.
Yeah, and you have known me your entire life.
No, I lived for quite some time before you were around.
Okay, that's true.
So we're once again, like said, what was said by Zach is that we're two brothers, and we're just making a podcast about video games.
That's right. And
some of them are in fact classic.
Some of them are classic. Well, not a classic game. Well, maybe a classic game, but what game have you been playing recently, Seth?
Recently, actually, I've been playing a game that is still in early access, so it is not even a game, I guess, right? If it's not been released, is it a game? I think so. It's a game called GTFO, and you can draw your own conclusion what that stands for. I have been playing the game for... I played it for a few hours with it's a multiplayer only game, so
okay.
I was a co-op game. I think you can play by yourself, but you'll die. And you're essentially these soldiers, I think, or prisoners, or soldier prisoners that are trying to find an object using terminal systems. Like, you have to go find terminals, and then you have to ping and query different locations of items and keys and stuff. At the same time of navigating an RNG type, which is random number generator. So it's like a random system, like a random map. Well, yeah, the map's not random, but the encounters are of monsters, which may be aliens, but they're around and they can swarm and kill you pretty quickly. So you go through everybody's got can take different weapons, and different tools, so you can have somebody with like a sentry gun, and or I play with like a biodetector, so I can detect if aliens are behind the doors, which are helpful. I don't even know if they're necessarily aliens or if they're like monsters, but yeah. So I've been playing GTFO. It's in early access. It's fun if you like cooperative horror, I guess. It's kind of a weird genre, kind of like Dead by Daylight or games that are Friday the 13th, I guess. Games that are horror-driven games where you're doing jump scares, but you're with buddies.
Yeah, so it works.
And I feel like it's kind of more of like Aliens versus like Alien, if that makes any sense. Okay, yeah, that does make sense. I don't know if that makes sense for the listeners, but it makes sense to me. Yes. Alien is more of a horror, truly horror movie, where Aliens is more like jump scare, Marines fighting aliens type thing.
Yes, okay, yeah. Cool.
So what about you? What have you been playing recently?
Yeah, well, I've been playing through again Red Dead Redemption 2 for the PlayStation 4. I already played through it. I got it actually on release a while back, but I decided I wanted to get back onto the dusty trail and hitch up my spurs and get back on my horse and ride around town.
Is it high noon?
It's high noon. It's a very well-made game from Rockstar. For those who haven't for some reason heard of it, it's a cowboy game, but it's really fun. You play as a cowboy in a fictional state in the Old West, and you do cowboy things. You get into duels. You can do bounty hunting. You can rob banks. You can rob trains. You can rob individuals on the street. Or you can be the nicest cowboy around and do chores for people.
It's like Grand Theft Auto in the Wild West.
Yeah, it's like Grand Theft Auto in the Wild West, where instead of stealing like Cadillacs, you can steal like horses.
Now, what if I've never played Red Dead Redemption 1, would I need to have played it to play Red Dead Redemption 2?
So I actually never played Red Dead Redemption 1.
Okay.
But not really. There are references to Red Dead Redemption 1, but Red Dead Redemption 2, despite its name, is actually a prequel to the first game.
Oh.
And so there are characters who appear in the first game who are in this game, but you're getting more introduced to these characters now, versus how you encountered them in the original game.
Oh, good. So it's like actually that makes me want to actually pick it up sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll
I
pick
definitely
it up
recommend it.
Once the holiday seasons is actually over in real life.
Yes, yeah.
Where things get a little wiggly wobbly when we reference real time and recording, I guess.
Yeah.
But in order to provide a Christmas episode or an episode of Christmas Week, we are doing some pre-records. So.
Yay! But no, it is a very fun game. I would say that if you have played the first game, you probably would get a couple of maybe like inside jokes and stuff like that. But having not played the first game, I never felt like I was out of the game at any point, or I never felt lost in it. They always kind of it very much does what GTA does, where there will be references to previous GTA games, but if you pick up GTA 5, you don't necessarily need to have played GTA 4.
But GTA 4 is a pretty good game.
Yeah, and Red Dead Redemption 1 is also, from what I've heard and from what my roommate has told me, a very good game. But
I actually own it.
Need to pick it up. Oh, cool.
I own it on the PS3.
Yes, yes.
I had some difficulty with really getting into it, which is why I was hesitant about Red Dead Redemption 2, but maybe having it available on the PC will make it easier for me to get into the game.
Yeah.
I tend to get into games easier when I'm on the PC.
I definitely recommend it. And it's a game that you can definitely go back and replay. There is a what is it called? A moral compass for the characters, so you can
like a Paragon Renegade.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, you can either play it as quote unquote an outlaw, or you can play it as essentially like a goody two shoes. So you can do more good things for people, which will affect different elements of the game. Not necessarily, pretty much the endings, from what I understand, the same, but it will affect different elements in the game.
It's no green and red blue reapers or anything like that.
No, I don't think so.
Which is, both of those comments are a reference to a game called Mass Effect, which is a grand game. I don't know if Mass Effect would be considered a classic game, but I mean, we could probably cover it in an episode. We're pretty loosey goosey when it comes to what our definitions of what things that we cover in this podcast are. So in the last few episodes, we've actually been covering deep dives onto specific games. We have done a deep dive on Journeyman, and we did a deep dive on the episode that we just did, Half-Life. That's right. So, which I guess included the whole series itself. But so today we're going to go back to kind of like what we did with Mech, and talk kind of about a game development company, and specifically a license that game development company has. So that game development company is LucasArts.
Yes. And with this episode, probably a caveat would be we can definitely return to the topic of LucasArts. They are a very they're a company that has a very strong and very long library of games. But we'll specifically be looking at the Star Wars IP of LucasArts games that Seth and I grew up with, or have fond memories or not so fond memories of playing. Yes.
In fact, according to the Wikipedia, LucasArts was founded in 1982, which at the time of this recording is about 37 years ago. And they are currently owned by the Walt Disney Company. And according to the Wikipedia, they have 10 employees, which it makes sense because Disney is shutting down the whole video game unit and keeping on a limited staff, I guess.
Yes.
So But that they are a very, very old company, now a subsidiary that's pretty much defunct. And they produced not only just Star Wars games, they produced a lot of games of different varieties, including Indiana Jones games and some unique intellectual properties that were all just LucasArts. They were founded by George Lucas.
Some other IPs of theirs include, besides Star Wars, Zombies Ate My Neighbors was one of theirs. Sam and Max. What else? You mentioned Indiana Jones. Also, Curse of Monkey Island.
Dig.
Yep.
There was a game called Dig, and there was also a game called not Dig. No, it was not. It wasn't called Dig. Not Dig. It was called. My mind is blanking. It was Loom. That's
Loom.
The name.
Okay.
And I did actually find it in my list of games. I own both Dig and Loom. They are more classic adventure games because LucasArts was really into that for a little while.
And they also of course handled pretty much up until the Disney acquisition almost every Star Wars game in some manner of speaking, be it with help from a company like BioWare or Traveler's Tales when it came to like the Old Republic or Lego Star Wars games, respectively. But they've pretty much always had their name on the Star Wars IP.
Yeah, and either through a developer role or like a publisher type role.
Yeah, exactly. But Seth and I both have pretty similar histories, I would say, with LucasArts, just because we're both into Star Wars as youths, and we're still into Star Wars. Which Lucas, when you think of LucasArts Star Wars games, Seth, what comes to your mind?
When I think of LucasArts, what comes to mind?
Or LucasArts Star Wars specifically?
So specifically Star Wars, I would probably think of the Dark Forces series.
Okay.
I know when we were... So Dark Forces specifically was a first-person shooter that done by LucasArts because Doom was very popular. So LucasArts decided that they were also going to be very popular by making a first-person shooter. And so they created Star Wars Dark Forces and was actually a successful first-person shooter line. And that was for me personally, was the first person shooter that I saw someone play that they were jumping around, and you can't jump in Doom, which was the game, or Wolfenstein.
Right.
So so I saw those games and played those games earlier, and then I saw Dark Forces, and a minor thing like just being able to jump in a game made the game feel so much more realistic. And I kind of blew me away in regards to the capabilities of what you could do with the type of games. Yeah,
and that's kind of one of the cooler parts about Dark Forces, where Doom is fairly straightforward in terms of its gameplay. There are some puzzle elements every now and then. Dark Forces kind of mixes the puzzle elements with some very simplistic in ways platforming. Simplistic in the sense that platforming in a first-person perspective can be difficult, so that you do it in the game, but I wouldn't say it's an incredibly complex platforming. But they did still add platforming into a first-person shooter, which was very new for the time.
Right, and I think platforming itself was a new genre, so even that type of situation, like doing that in a first-person shooter, like you said, was difficult in its own right.
Oh,
now, absolutely. Going back and going through it, you can kind of identify the trope puzzles, as it were, pretty easily, but back then there was no reference, so you would kind of go in kind of confused. So we actually kind of, because Star Wars is such a big property to talk about, we ended up deciding to kind of break this episode out into 3 different subsections. Let us know like what your thoughts are, and let us know like how you feel about like, do you like deep dives onto specific video games? Do you like deep dives onto developers? Do you like a little blend? Like, let us know. Like, send us an email. We'll still consider you for our contest and giveaway, and it'll help us kind of refine like what we talk about, because we can go on about specific games forever. We can also go on about specific publishers forever.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And let us know if you like the history aspect or like the gameplay aspect, or like what part of the podcast speaks to you the most, and we'll try to do more or less of whatever you guys want to hear, because that's, we do like to hear ourselves talk, which is probably number one reason why at least I'm doing this. But yes. We also like to produce a product that people want to actually listen to weekly. So so we're going to structure it. We're going to talk about the first game that we like to talk about is the Phantom Menace game, which hopefully is Zachary's first game that comes to his mind when he thinks of LucasArts.
Definitely one of the first games. The Phantom Menace game came out pretty much right alongside the Phantom Menace movie. So the game, I believe, came out in 1999 along with the movie when it came out. It was on PC, it was on PlayStation, I believe it was also on the Dreamcast. It is a third-person, kind of top-down-ish, the perspective's kind of weird, platformer action adventure game.
I don't know if there's any adventure in this game.
But you play as a select number of characters from the Phantom Menace movie, including Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn. You can play as Princess Amidala, and you can play as Princess Amidala's Captain Panaka, who has like 2 lines in the entire movie, but he gets a whole segment of the game to himself. There's pretty much a segment where it is the Captain Panaka game. Yes. The Captain Panaka game. It is, looking back on it, it is a very interesting game. Sometimes you're playing it and you wonder if they even knew what Star Wars was. Because they got some elements right. They got the lightsabers right. They got the, droids right. But then there are other parts that are just very strange. Such as if your character dies by being crushed by something or being like jumping into like a power grid, they'll explode into a billion pieces like they're Legos. I don't even remember that. Yeah. There's also a moment in the game where you talk to a guard. So in the Qui-Gon Jinn part of the game, you're in Mos Espa, and you're doing. It kind of turns into a fetch quest game. You're kind of going around doing assorted chores around Mos Espa before you can talk to Anakin. Eventually, you can talk to Anakin. That progresses the game. There's a part of the game where you need to get down to the level where the pod racing is going to happen, and you talk to a guard, and the guard tells you, "Oh, if you want to get down to where the pod racers are, just jump over the railing over there." And if you do that, you die. So it is. Which, like, I don't know how many games tell you to openly do something which will kill your character in the game.
You're the one that's taking advice from a spectator.
That is true. Well, he's like
a
guard.
Yeah. I don't know. Is he? When was the last time you played this game?
That's probably not for many years. But it actually, the whole Mos Espa part of the game is very amusing, because you run into a whole cast of characters, including a gentleman who, if you force push him, he tells you to stop pushing me over and over and over again. There's also
YouTube videos of it.
Yes, there's also a man who sells dung worms, and if you walk on top of his dung worms, everyone will comment on your atrocious smell for the rest of that level.
That's true.
I think it actually makes it hard to pass by certain parts of the level, because you can't progress when certain characters won't talk to you normally.
Yes, because you smell like dung worms.
Yes.
I think the part of that game that really spoke to me, as it were, was the introduction. as the game actually plays out pretty faithfully to the movie.
Yes, yeah.
And you start off and you go into the conference room where the gas comes in, and I think you can actually, if you decide not to do anything, you can die in that room. And that's the end of the game.
It's a very it also allows you to literally kill anyone in that game.
Yes,
mind you, if you kill like important characters like Padme or Anakin, it will be like game over, you have killed Anakin, but you can go around most of the Gungan city killing every Gungan you encounter that's not Jar Jar Binks. And for most part you will not be punished, as Jar Jar might say.
It is definitely an interesting movie adaptation of a game. Yes. And I don't feel like they adapted any of the other games like it. Like, they adapted the other movies. Other movies have adaptions, including the original trilogy have video game adaptions. Yeah. But I don't feel like they made another Phantom Menace type adaptation.
There almost isn't another game like Phantom Menace, period. Like, there are games that have the same gameplay style in some ways, but it's just so unique of a game to pick up and play. And it is a wild time.
Yes, I would in fact recommend it over watching the actual movie.
Yeah, almost purely for the curiosity element. I highly recommend it, and there are some hilarious cheat codes in that game.
I don't. How do you even get it now? Is it abandonware?
Probably abandonware. Again, it was also on the PlayStation and it was on the Dreamcast. So if you have those consoles, you can definitely pick it up for that. But for the PC, at least, it is abandonware. So, browse around eBay, see if you can find a copy of the CD. I think someone on Reddit managed to find a workaround to get it to work on modern consoles, or modern PCs rather. So that's how I've been able to recently just at least load it up and look at it recently. But I haven't done a deep playthrough in years.
Yeah, I did just do a quick look for Phantom Menace on myabandonware.com, and I did not find any. I did find Return of the Phantom, but I also found Star Wars Pit Droids from Windows in 1999.
I had that game.
yes, I remember, which was which, I mean, I guess it's in the same vein of Phantom Menace since it's pit droids, but you have to use pit droids of different colors to solve puzzles because they can only walk in certain directions.
Yeah, it's a very obnoxious puzzle game that I definitely want to play again. At some point. And knowing it's on, actually, I found my original CD, so I don't even have to worry about going on abandonware. So I just gotta pop that pupper in. And
what pupper? Oh, Star Wars Pit Droids?
Yeah.
Oh, you found the actual CD?
Yeah, I found my original CD. Yeah.
For Phantom Menace or Pit Droids?
Both.
Oh, well, that's because you're a collector there.
Yes, hoarder, if you would.
No, your house is clean.
Mostly.
But yes, so, or ask Zach, he'll mail you the copy of the Phantom.
Yeah, I'll just mail you a copy and you can have it.
So back to Dark Forces. I think Dark Forces was a series of first-person shooter games that came out when, like I said, when LucasArts was trying to capitalize on the first-person popularity, and so there was a series of games because it was very successful. There was Star Wars Dark Forces, Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. There was an expansion to that called Sith Tales.
Mystery of the Sith.
Mystery of the Sith.
Yes.
Sith Tales sounds like some Veggie Tales type of...
Sith Tales sounds a lot more like child friendly, like it's like what Darth Maul reads to his kids at night.
Yes,
Sith Tales.
Yeah, that's Sith Tales, where there is no peace.
Yes.
And then there was Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. and then there was Jedi Academy, which was the last. It was a Star Wars Jedi Knight series. Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. I don't know. Was it Jedi? Yes, it was just Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy.
Yeah, the naming scheme gets a little confusing because you have Dark Forces, and then you have Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, and then you have Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, and then you just have Jedi Academy.
Jedi Knight.
Jedi Academy.
Jedi Academy.
Yeah.
So they kind of go all around the place. There was so Dark Forces was released in 95. Dark Forces 2 and Mysteries of Sith came out in 97, 98. Then there was a lag, about 3 years, and then in 02 and then 03 came Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. I remember we owned Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and got Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. The first 4 games, the first 3 games and the expansion, Mystery of the Sith, all take place around a character called Kyle Katarn. And he is kind of like, I kind of think about him, I feel like Kyle Katarn is kind of like Jedi hobo, is like what I view him as. He's, or like Jedi thug. He's a lot actually like if Han Solo believed in the Force and kind of believed in the Force and was just less charismatic. Yeah. He's kind of like or like Dash Rendar.
Yes.
It's kind of like Kyle Katarn's he's a gunslinging mercenary who somehow becomes a Jedi, mostly through injecting himself in the Force or something. Some weird plot where he becomes the Jedi because he finds a Valley of the Jedi and then attunes himself to it and then becomes a Jedi. Even though he never joins the Jedi Order, he just knows how to use Jedi powers.
Yes.
To go back to gameplay, it's really cool because they starts off the game as a first-person shooter, traditional guns that are all Star Wars themed, and then you develop your Jedi powers, and then you get Jedi powers that you can use in a first-person shooter along with a lightsaber.
Yes.
Which, once again, this is an action game, so the story doesn't have to really be there. The story, there is a story, and you can certainly...
it's loose, at least for Jedi Outcast, the story mostly revolves around a Imperial remnant group who is looking to create a army of Dark Force wielders, and they are being led by a lizard man who looks...
reptile man.
Yeah, a reptile man who sounds like Darth Vader.
But he looks like a street shark.
Yes.
Yes. His name is Dasan.
And he has a scantily clad apprentice named Tavion,
yes.
Who you think dies and then she comes back. It's very, very...
She gets better.
You
do team up with Lando during parts of Jedi Outcast,
where he is voiced by Billy Dee Williams.
Yes, because Billy needs work.
Yes. And it's pretty much just Billy Dee Williams making one-liners throughout most of his time with you.
Which is all you need in life, really, is Billy Dee Williams following you around, giving you one-liners. And you actually take his expanded universe ship, the Lady Luck. Yeah, Lady Luck, his casino ship that he happened to have, which is in all of the Star Wars Dark Forces, so they all used to be legit. They used to be canon. Then Disney bought LucasArts, and now they are no longer canon. So they're now part of the Legacy and they have not been grandfathered in at this time.
No, and likely parts of them won't be, considering the original Dark Forces plot revolved around you stealing the Death Star plans, and that's been covered already in the canon thanks to Rogue One. So I highly doubt we will get much of the Dark Forces universe besides references here and there. But who knows? Anything's possible with Disney at this point.
Yeah, though think about it, with like Rogue One, instead of starring all those people, just Kyle Katarn in the Dark Forces game.
Imagine if Cassian was just Imagine if Cassian was just Kyle Katarn.
just Kyle Katarn. Yeah, so it's an interesting series of Star Wars games. They're definitely a lot of fun. Even till today, I feel like first person shooters age pretty well. And I think that you can have a really fun time playing through. I recommend Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. I'm personally a big fan of it. I don't think you necessarily need it to have played the other ones to enjoy it. Jedi Academy was the first game in the Dark Forces Star Wars series where you could actually design your own person, and you can pick your own lightsaber color, which was really cool. So,
yeah, and it also allows you to do later in the game, you can build a double-bladed lightsaber a la Darth Maul, and you can also do a akimbo style, two blades in both hands.
Yes.
Which is very unique. I mean, we saw that in the movies, but we hadn't gotten a gameplay with that yet. So that was very fun.
And it allowed you to you could get different powers depending on your lightsaber style.
Yes.
So you could, like, if you had the two lightsabers, you could like spin them around yourself or something.
Yeah, and Jedi Academy also did something cool where there's two endings. There's a light side and a dark side ending. Right. Where if you use more dark side abilities, you'll lean closer to taking the dark side ending. The choice is ultimately always yours. Even if you take all dark side abilities, you can choose the light side. But there is two different endings in the game. The dark side ending is actually pretty crazy. And it involves you stealing a Star Destroyer at one point, so that's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of. I actually liked the pacing of Jedi Outcast better than Academy. Academy makes you start as a Jedi in the beginning, where Outcast restricts you to first person until guns until mid game, which is, I feel like, a better pacing, but. Overall, I think it's a great series of games. Our final game that we wanted to talk about,
if you could call it a game.
Yeah, if we could call it a game. So there was a period of time where LucasArts got a little weird, and it was, we like to call this the early mid 90s, 96, 97. And they released a few different games. Some games that they released were games like Afterlife, where it was a god game, kind of akin to Black and White before Black and White was a thing, where your job was to build a heaven and hell a la Sim City, and assign punishments to your citizens and infrastructures for the different sins of your citizens. So you could have like a envy city, and you need to make certain envy locations. It's a interesting game that was released. It actually scored pretty similar, and it was people who liked SimCity kind of liked it because it was kind of in that vein but different, right? It kind of broke from the same kind of thing that was coming out during that time. And then the other one was a game called Outlaws, which Zachary has familiarity with. Yeah,
so Outlaws is a rather bizarre first-person shooter made by LucasArts. You play as a cowboy. Bizarre in the sense that the game is your fairly run-of-the-mill sort of first-person shooter, but there's a lot of really weird like Easter eggs and stuff. Like, for example, there's one part where if you throw a stick of dynamite down an outhouse, there's an alien that you see in the outhouse, and you can, like, if you blow up the dynamite, then you'll go down into under the outhouse, and there's a spaceship under the outhouse. So there's just some weird elements to it. I wouldn't say it's an incredibly it's not really an incredibly new first-person shooter by any means, but it's definitely a bizarre first-person shooter.
Yeah. To go back to Easter eggs, actually, I was just reading that Afterlife had a video Easter egg where if you cheated too much, they would send a Death Star to destroy buildings.
Oh, yes.
So, because they were LucasArts, so they had the rights for Death Star. So, yes. But during this time that they were releasing games such as Afterlife and Outlaws, they released a game called Yoda Stories?
Yes, Star Wars Yoda Stories, which was the second in a 2-game series of what they called desktop adventures, the first being Indiana Jones and his desktop adventures.
And these games took place on the Windows platform, and you would open them up in a window. Hence, they were a desktop adventure because they would play on your desktop in a window. And they essentially there's this article on Kotaku.
Yep.
By Luke Plunkett, who wrote, "The Star Wars game was so bad they should have made more of them." Where he talks about how the game that didn't have a plot, it didn't also either really have, it just had you have tasks. And the game starts off with you. It's like a completely like Zelda kind of looking game, like old school Zelda looking game, where it's Luke instead of Link, and he flies his X-wing to Dagobah and gets out of his X-wing and talks to R2-D2, who's already on Dagobah.
Yes.
So that's where, and R2-D2 then becomes an object that he can pick up. And then he goes and finds Yoda, who gives him a quest. In fact, that quest is to go and rescue a general who was kidnapped by stormtroopers. And Yoda gives you this entire quest in normal speak, except for the beginning of the conversation and the end of it, where he says, "Take this, it will help you," and you get an ice drill, and then you're off to Hoth to rescue a general because Yoda told you to.
Which, the perfect in line with the plot of Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, exactly. It's a unique game.
So a very quick brief history of the style of game, desktop adventures. Apparently LucasArts wanted to make games that effectively were like solitaire, or like a Space Cadet pinball, if you would, where you could pop it up, you can play like 5 to 10 minutes while you're at work, and then if your boss comes by, you can close it out and you didn't lose any progress. They tried this at first with the Indiana Jones game. It got some decent reviews from people who understood what was going on, and then they released the Yoda Stories game, and it just was like got 1-star reviews. There was a Game Boy Color version that was released, and it currently is the lowest ever rated Game Boy Color game in existence. So that just goes to tell you about Yoda Stories.
Yes, I remember this game clearly, and I remember playing this game, and I remember actually enjoying this game. So that could give you just the heads up in regards to our level of what games that we might enjoy. And with that, let's get on to talking about the buy, wait, pass segment, where we'll tell you about which games you should buy, wait, or pass on.
Absolutely.
Based on our love of Yoda stories, you may now no longer take our recommendations seriously.
Well, I think because you went first last time with the buy, wait, pass, I'll go first this time. Okay. I'm just gonna take full
take the wheel.
Take the wheel here. The game I am really interested in seeing is Ghost of Tsushima, which is a game created by Sucker Punch Productions, and it's going to be published on the PS4. And that is due out in Q2 of 2020. So Ghost of Tsushima is a samurai adventure game, or samurai action adventure game, in a third-person open world game. And just from some early gameplay trailers and demo trailers, it looks really cool. It is heavy emphasis on stealth, which usually isn't my type of game, but just the whole aesthetic of kind of a samurai world, or samurai, setting. It kind of makes the game very appealing, because we don't really have a lot of games set in kind of the time of the samurai. And that is, again, due out in Q2 or Q3 of 2020. It's probably going to be a wait for me, just because it's with games like this, I mean, it's so hyped up. I kind of just want to see the result before I go any further with it. But being a big fan of Akira Kurosawa cinema, I definitely will keep an eye on it.
Nice. And that sounds like a fun game. Is it what you play as a samurai?
Yeah, so it actually takes place on Tsushima Island in 1270s. And it takes place during the first Mongol invasion of Japan, which was an actual event. And so it has some element of realism. I believe there is some supernatural elements that go on as well, but it's just the element of playing as a samurai during a realistic time period is something that you don't always get in a video game. It's a very unique timeline to set a game.
Is it exclusive to PS4?
At the moment will be exclusive to PS4. I don't know if there's a plan for it to be released anywhere else, but who knows.
And so for my game, the game that I'm looking forward to is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2.
Oh,
a role-playing game that is being published by Paradox Interactive, being developed by Hardsuit Labs, and is planned to be released in 2020. It looks like it's a sequel to the Vampire Bloodlines game, which was
cool.
a very good RPG, just a role-playing game, and takes place in the World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade setting, which is a setting and a role-playing game that Paradox also owns. That was done by the company called White Wolf. Mm-hmm. And they do tabletops and LARPs for the setting, and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines takes place in that canon and that world, and you're becoming a vampire begins a war in a Seattle blood trade. So the game will take place in Seattle, which is cool. It's not a city that's usually seen. And you'll be trying to uncover a conspiracy between all these different factions. And should be very cool, and should have some fun, good dialogues and stories and politics, and if you like that kind of stuff, it'll be right up your alley. If you don't, well, then maybe pass on it. But I like this stuff, so I'm gonna buy it. I recommend, if you want to get into it or get ready to get into it, I would recommend downloading Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I would also recommend you download any mods that might make the game a little more friendlier, because the game needs some modification to be played perfectly.
Yeah, very fair. Cool. Well, that being said, we do have a bunch of different ways that you can reach out to us. You can reach out to us to our Gmail or through our Facebook, both of which are Classic Gaming Brothers. The Gmail is classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at CGBrothersPod. And you can also hit us up on Instagram if we have anything on Instagram.
Which we might.
We might. We are still collecting names for our competition. We have a contest going, if you haven't been listening, where if you send us an email just letting us know what you think of the podcast, you know, what you like, what you don't like, things that you want to hear us talk about, your name will be entered into a chance to win a game of your choosing off of a list that we have, not necessarily a game of your choosing ever. But we have a defined set of games.
Yes.
And you can choose one of those games. If you don't want one of those games, sorry.
Yeah, we have close to 300 games, and we'll send you that list. You can look at the list if you want a game, or if you want a game for a friend, then you just let us know and we'll send you the Steam key. They are PC games, unless you want the Phantom Menace. That game will come to free in your PO. If you have a PO box or a home address, we will mail that game to you, because Zachary needs less stuff in his house.
I will send you a copy of the Phantom Menace on CD-ROM.
Burned a la 2005.
Yes. But yeah, definitely reach out to us if you have any questions or comments about the podcast. We love to hear it.
Yeah.
And as always,
don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
We've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That is correct. All right.
That's a great... Just kick the music in.